Hey everybody, Harold here again. The second in my series on the Power Query Ribbon Review. Last time we left off with the Data tab in Excel. As I promised, today we're going to go into Power Query. I'm going to show you the File tab and review the interface a little bit. So to go to Power Query, well, I'm going to take some data in with me. I will select anywhere in this inventory table, Control A, go up to from table range in my ribbon, and there we go. Loaded it up. First query into Power Query. Power Query shows us what source it's coming from up here in the formula bar, and it automatically changed types. Power Query will do this. It tries to see what data types are in your columns and match to the correct type. Even if they are the correct type, it shows up the change type in your query settings. Query settings show the properties, which is basically just the table name. You can also change that over here by double clicking. We could now call this inventory. If we say enter, it'll change here and here. Query settings, said before, we'll see more of this, show your applied steps. Each time you make a step, it shows up here and you can go to that step and see your data as it was. We'll see that more. You can edit these steps, change what position they are in the list. Again, we'll see all of that more. Here is your actual columns of data. Each one has a type button and a sort and filter button, and shows you data on how your data is. Everything here is valid. If you want to go in and see stats on that, and you'll know how bad it is, you're going to want to transform from here using home transform or add column menus. But today we're just going to talk about the file menu. The file menu options are close and load. Save your changes to this query, close the query editor window, and load results to the default destination. If I close this right now, it will go to an Excel table on a new worksheet in my workbook. Close and load to gives you more options. We click on that. Now I can say, do I want to go to a table, which is the default, a pivot table, which is a nice option, pivot chart, only create a connection. That would just be the queries there, but I'm not taking it anywhere. Where do I want to put this data? If I'm doing a table or a pivot table or a pivot chart, I can say my existing worksheet and choose a location or on a new worksheet. Add this data to the data model. That adds it to the data model for use in Power Query and Power Pivot. Again, I will show you that a little bit later. For now, we'll just show you. If I just say new worksheet, add to the data model, I'll go ahead and show you a little bit of that. Okay. So it's loaded 74 rows, it's loading my data, all loaded up nice and neat. I'm going to talk about the data model. If you go to Power Pivot, and if you don't have Power Pivot, just go to your file and add it to your ribbon. It's under the add. It's a comms file, pretty easy to find. A comms add-in on your file menu in Excel. So let me show you the data model. If I say manage the data model, There it is in Power Pivot. It's got data view, diagram view. You might say, hey, that looks like access. Yes, if you load more than one table in here, which we will do later, you can create relationships between the tables and use all the fields in Power Pivot. I'm going to close this out for now. I'm going to go back to my query, my preview again. I'll just double click on my query and we'll go back to the file menu. Now once you've closed and loaded two, you can only close and load. That's something I wanted to point out also. If you want to get rid of the query, close the window without saving your changes, you can discard and close. And then we have quite a few options and settings here, and I will go over all of them. Query options. Query options come in two categories, global and current workbook. Either all your workbooks or for the one you're working on now. Query peek. I showed you that before when you're in the queries task pane in Excel and you hover over it, it gives you a preview of your data that you can go right to or edit from there. Query table style will open your queries. When the table is created, it'll be the default table design or color from Excel. If you want to use the one you have, leave this off. If you want to default to the Excel green, check this back on. Data load, type detection. This is what tells or what Excel looks at to try to detect your column types and headers. You can always detect them for unstructured sources. You can detect them for each file setting, which is the default, and you can never detect them, and you could decide that on your own. Background data. Always allow data previews to download in the background or for each file setting, which is the default, and never allow the data previews to download in the background. Default load setting. Standard load setting. What does that mean? Loads queries to a new worksheet with a single query, and if you do more than one, it loads them to the data model. You can override these for given query using the load to dialog. So if you do one, it's going to go to a worksheet. If you close and load, if you do more than one, it's going to go to the data model if you just close and load. But if you choose close and load two, then you can specify your own. You can specify customs on these, whether you want it to go to the worksheet or the model. And you can do a fast data load. They load faster, but it says Excel may become responsive for long periods. I don't recommend this. Your data cache management options. It says they're stored on your disk and you can clear the cache if you want to. Power Query Editor settings. Layout. If you want the query settings pane on or off all the time, and you want to display the formula bar, which I leave on because it shows my data source. I'm not so much interested in the DAX. I'll explain that in a minute. Data preview. Player preview using a monospace font, so that's just a font choice. Show white space and new line characters. That makes it look better. I leave that on. Parameters. Always allow parameterization. That's saying if you want your data source and transform dialogs to allow arguments to come in with the data. IntelliSense in the formula bar, advanced editor, and custom column dialog. Well, you know IntelliSense is basically this. Changes IntelliSense is when you start typing something and Excel tries to read your mind. You've all seen this. And it won't take effect until the next time you open the Power Query window if you check or uncheck this box. Security. Require user approval for new native database queries. If you want to query something, yeah, you should probably approve it. Certificate revocation. Well, make sure your data sources are secure. Probably a good thing. Comprehensive check might be too much. Basic check you always want to do. Don't leave this wide open. You might end up on some unsecured sites, and some bad stuff could happen. Web preview warning level, moderate's pretty good. Display a warning before showing a web preview if the URL hasn't been explicitly approved. Strict will always show it. None will never show it. Moderate's probably good for protection. I haven't approved any authentication services. If I had, I could manage them here. Privacy, always contribute data according to your privacy level settings. So that's something you set yourself, whether always combine data. Combine data according to each file, that's the default, and just do it no matter what. So beware, this could expose sensitive or confidential data to an unauthorized person. That's not a good thing. Diagnostics, the crash dump collection is, well, these are error tracing, and it creates a folder where your dump traces go, error, stuff like that. This is more advanced for people who are actually diagnosing large file errors. You probably won't need to use this. It also shows you your version of Power Query. Now, if we go to our current workbook settings, data load, again, type detections. Yeah, we want to try to type the column type, data types, and headers. Relationships, yes, we want to create relationships when adding to the data model for the first time. Let's see what this I says. If there's foreign keys in a relational database, existing relationships, they'll load them with the data. Update the relationships when refreshing queries. You might check for other relationships, but as it says, it might remove some you created. So if you're not sure about this, it's probably a good idea to leave it off. And you do want to allow your data previews to download in the background. Regional settings, your locale. This is supposed to give you the correct date and time formats. If you're in Europe, you should get European date format, which is day, month, year, instead of United States continental, which is month, day, year. I've tried to use this to convert dates from European to American, and it doesn't really seem to work, but it will recognize where you are originally. And finally, privacy levels. My data, according to your privacy levels, these are just privacy we saw in global at the current workbook level. Probably want to do it according to your privacy levels so as not to expose yourself to any harm. So that's the file menu. I know, boring, but a lot of people need to know a lot of this stuff to use the program, and you need to know it's there. Next time we will move on to the Home tab, which has a lot more actual cleaning tools involved, and I'll show you how to use them. Thanks for watching this one. I hope you liked it. If you do, please tell everyone and subscribe.